It was nearing dusk when Brody found himself walking the narrow path by the loch, the still waters mirroring the twilight sky. He often took this route after a long day of work, a way to clear his mind before heading home. The wind was biting, but it was the kind of cold that kept him sharp, alert. His breath rose in visible clouds as he adjusted his scarf and quickened his pace. Something, though, felt different that evening, an odd quiet, like the land itself was holding its breath. That's when he saw it. At first, it was just a dark silhouette on the far side of the water, sitting on a rock, still as stone. Brody's heart skipped, but his curiosity got the better of him, so he stepped just a little bit closer. The figure was large, hunched slightly with broad shoulders. What he first assumed to be a man soon revealed itself to be something far stranger. As the fading light caught the edges of the figure, Brody realized that it was the head of a wolf, its fur coarse and dark, yet it moved with the deliberate, almost human grace of a fisherman. In its hands it clutched a line, as if waiting patiently for the next bite. The creature didn't turn toward him, didn't acknowledge him in any way, but Brody couldn't shake the feeling that it knew he was there. The presence exuded a weight, a calm that should have reassured him, but instead made the hairs on his neck stand on end. Something ancient, something out of place. He watched as the figure reeled in its line, pulling up a struggling fish from the depths, its sharp teeth visible in the dim light. Brody stumbled back, too stunned to scream. He turned and ran, never daring to look back. And that, my dear listeners, brings us to the topic of tonight's episode, the Wulver. The Wulver is no ordinary creature of folklore. Unlike the werewolves that populate the dark corners of the European legends, shifting and howling beneath the full moon, the Wulver is something, well, a bit different. It is said to have the body of a man, but the head of a wolf. Not a twisted half-transformation, but a permanent state of being. The Wulver's fur is dark brown, almost black, coarse like the brambles that grow wild in the untamed forests of Scotland. Its eyes are often described as deeply intelligent, a glowing amber that pierces through the gloom like a lighthouse on a stormy night. Despite its fearsome appearance, the Wulver is not known for violence. In fact, the lore surrounding this strange creature paints it as a peaceful, solitary figure, more interested in the quiet working of fishing rather than terrorizing the locals. Legends from the Shetland Islands claim that the Wulver lives alone in a cave, tucked away in the most remote areas, far from human habitation. The creature spends his days sitting on a particular rock, the Wulver's Stain, fishing in the loch with old line, day in and day out, regardless of the season or even the weather. As for its origins, no one can say for sure. Some believe it is an ancient spirit, a protector of sorts, who once guarded the people of the Shetlands in times of famine. Others claim it to be the last remnant of an ancient race, predating humankind, left behind as the world moved on without it. There's even a whisper that the Wulver is the cursed form of a man who made a deal with darker forces, trapped in a wolf's body for eternity. But whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. The Wulver exists beyond mere myth. It does not lurk in the shadows to frighten or hunt, but its very presence commands respect, awe, and yes, a touch of fear. Many tales speak of it, leaving fish on the doorstep of those in need, an almost gentle reminder that it watches out over the land, even if its methods are beyond human understanding. Eyewitnesses of it are rare, and the stories they tell are steeped in both awe and terror, for seeing such a creature isn't a casual experience. Each account, unique in its own way, leaves the witnesses with an indelible mark, one that lingers in the mind long after the encounter. Isabel's story begins in the dead of winter, a time when the land itself seemed to conspire against her family. Her father, once a robust and able fisherman, had fallen ill that season. He had been the lifeblood of their small household, providing food that kept him from starvation. As the weeks passed, the illness sapped his strength until he could no longer walk to the loch, let alone cast a line. With no money for medicine and no help from neighbors, Isabel found herself consumed with despair, watching the small pile of food they had left shrink day by day. One evening, as she sat alone by the dying fire, contemplating how much longer they could survive, there was a soft knock at the door. At first, Isabel thought it was the wind playing tricks on her, but the knock came again, slow and deliberate. Cautiously, she opened the door, the bitter cold biting into the room, but no one stood on the threshold. She stepped outside, her breath visible in the chill air, and her eyes fell to the ground. There, laid out as if by invisible hands, was a pile of freshly caught fish, gleaming silver in the moonlight. Isabel froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Who could have left this? She had seen no one approach, heard no footsteps in the snow. As she scanned the horizon, her gaze caught a shape, something large, moving at the edge of the woods. A figure, hunched, with broad shoulders and the unmistakable silhouette of a wolf's head, slowly retreating into the night. Isabel rushed back inside, slamming the door shut. She didn't speak of the incident until the next morning when she told her father. His eyes widened, and in a hoarse whisper he muttered a name she had only heard in hushed tones as a child. The Wulver. Over the following weeks, the fish appeared again, always in silence, always when no one was watching. Isabel never dared to follow the creature, but she knew deep down that the Wulver was watching them, ensuring they didn't starve in the harshest winter. But with the relief came an unshakable fear, a fear that the Wulver, for all its kindness, was something far beyond human understanding. Yet, the Wulver saved them from their hunger, and her father got better in the spring and was able to fish again, and they never saw the Wulver again. Finley was a woodsman by trade, a man used to the sounds and smells of the forest. He prided himself on his ability to read the land, to know when storms were coming or when game was close by. Fear wasn't something that came easily to him. That was, until one foggy evening when Finley ventured into the northern woods, seeking a stag he'd been tracking all day. The sun had long since dipped low below the horizon. The mist clung to the trees like a shroud. He hadn't meant to wander so far, but in his pursuit of the stag he found himself near the loch, a place he rarely ventured after dark. The water was eerily still, its surface like glass reflecting the twisted branches of the trees overhead. As Finley crouched by the water's edge, catching his breath, he felt a presence. At first, it was a whisper of intuition, a sense that he wasn't alone. That's when he saw it. Sitting on a large rock by the water's edge, as though carved from the stone itself, was a figure. It was large, hulking, and unmistakably had the head of a wolf. Its amber eyes glowed faintly in the fog, piercing through the gloom to meet Finley's own. The creature was still, save for the slow, rhythmic movement of its arm, casting a fishing line into the loch. For what felt like hours, but was likely only moments, Finley stood paralyzed, unable to look away. He couldn't explain it, but the Wulver's eyes seemed to hold him in place, not with malice, but with a weight of something ancient, something beyond the mortal world. His heart raced, but his feet wouldn't move. The Wulver never snarled, never growled. It simply turned its head slightly, just enough for Finley to realize that it knew he was there, that it had always known. Panic surged through him, and his legs finally obeyed. He ran, stumbling through the underbrush, not daring to look back. When he returned to his camp the next morning, his gear was still there, neatly packed as he'd left it. But there, placed delicately on top, was a single trout, freshly caught, still wet with the lochs of water. Finley left the area and never returned to those woods again. I have to say with this eyewitness story here, you just don't get the sense of, well, why not return? What's the big thing? So this thing gave you the fish. I don't know. I just found that one a little odd. Now let's jump into the story of Alec. Alec was a boy of 12 when he had his encounter with the Wulver. He had grown up on the stories of the creature. His grandmother used to tell him that the Wulver watched over the hills, ensuring the land's balance. But Alec, ever the adventurous child, had dismissed the tales as mere superstition. That changed one evening, as he played along the rocky shore of the loch just before the sun set. He had been skipping stones when he noticed movement in the distance. At first, he thought it was a fisherman, like many he'd seen before sitting on a rock by the water. But as he squinted against the fading light, he realized the figure was wrong. Its head a bit too large. Too animalistic. Intrigued, Alex crept closer, his curiosity outweighing his fear. The creature sat with his back to him, its wolf-like ears twitching slightly at the sound of Alex's approach. He took another step forward, his foot crunching on the gravel below. In an instant, the Wulver's head turned toward him, its amber eyes locking into Alex's. The boy froze. He expected a snarl, a growl, something aggressive, but the Wulver simply watched him, its expression unreadable. Alec couldn't tell if it was curious or indifferent, but in that moment he felt a strange connection. It was as if the Wulver was studying him, measuring him, deciding whether he was a friend or a foe. Alec felt his throat tighten with fear, but something deep inside him told him not to run. Instead, he slowly stepped back, careful not to make any sudden movements. The Wulver's gaze followed him, but it never moved from its spot on the rock. Finally, Alec turned and sprinted home, heart pounding in his chest. When he told his grandmother what had happened, she nodded knowingly, but there was a sadness in her eyes. "The Wulver doesn't show itself without reason," she said softly. "You were meant to see it, boy, but don't take it lightly. That creature walks between worlds, and it doesn't always walk alone. These stories, each unique in their own way, paint a picture of the Wulver as a creature that exists outside of our understanding, neither friend nor foe, neither entity of this world nor completely of another. It is being bound by ancient rules, walking a path we can barely comprehend, and those who encounter it are forever changed. The Wulver's presence lingers, like the scent of the loch on a misty morning, or the soft ripple of water disturbed by something unseen beneath the surface. The Wulver stands apart from the monstrous tales we've so often hear. It doesn't hunt the living, nor does it seek vengeance on the world of men, but that doesn't mean it should be forgotten or ignored. The Wulver is a reminder that there are things out there in wild places of the world that exist beyond our understanding. It doesn't fit neatly into the boxes of good or evil. It just simply is, and that perhaps makes it more unsettling than the bloodthirsty beasts. So next time you find yourself by a lonely loch, and the wind carries a chill that sinks deep into your bones, keep an eye on the water. You may just catch a glimpse of a solitary figure on a rock, patiently fishing, waiting, and watching. Thank you for joining me tonight on Lunitar's Legends, Lore, and Lies. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps us reach more listeners who seek the truth behind the legend. And also, comment. I love getting comments, ideas, thoughts. We just had a new subscriber comment that he's Scottish, and he loves hearing tales from his land. So I thought I'd give him a shout out. And I might have misspoke there. I said he or she, or whatever. But that would be at Divas, Dinosaurs, and Demons. Thanks for subscribing, and thanks for commenting. Until next time, keep your eyes open, and remember, not all that is unknown means harm, but it's best to tread carefully, all the same.